I'm Graham,
And I'm Corinne, and we
and
are
we are
too
too
talented.
talented. Yeah, I think we nailed it. Yeah, I think that was good. I like
It
it.
sounded delayed on my side.
Okay, it didn't
But
on mine. It sounded right on.
all right.
All
Anyways,
right.
welcome to the podcast.
Welcome to the podcast. We're having a little bit of troubles this morning with electronics and coffee and everything else, but we're gonna forge ahead. We're gonna make this thing happen.
Oh, yes, we are.
So today we're going to talk about the most common interview questions and how to answer them. We're going to be kind of general with some of the questions that we're asking. It's stuff that you're very likely to get in an interview. At least, I mean, obviously the specific industry questions that you might get for your particular role or job will vary, but these tend to come up in almost every interview. So we feel like it's good to kind of talk through, dissect the question a little bit, talk through about maybe what the manager might be looking for, and then how we suggest answering each one. And we'll kind of go from there. Before we get started, though, Corinne, how is the world of running for you going? What's new?
I am recovering from Ura 50, and it's going pretty well, actually. I don't have any niggles or lingering, I don't know, injuries from the race, which is great. I have gotten back into, I did a pretty low volume week last week, and now this week's back to kind of normal-ish volume and starting to incorporate some speed because we only have 4 or 5 weeks before both of our next big race, which is Javelina 100, and you're doing the 100 mile and I'm doing the 100K. So we're making a hard pivot into fast running now. And I don't know, it's kind of fun and exciting and different. And it's starting to be fall weather here in Colorado, which is really nice to run in. So we're trying to also hit the sauna a little bit to do some of that heat training, as typically Javelina is very, very hot. It hit 100 degrees last year when I raced. So we're trying to keep those heat adaptations going as well. But yeah, training is feeling pretty good right now. How about you, Graham?
It's awesome. Yeah, kind of same. Last week I kind of cut some of the mileage down to kind of recover from pacing. Who would have thought I would need recovery from pacing? But Ura 50 is a tough race. So, I felt good. I ran a little longer over the weekend, and I felt pretty good on those runs. I was still a little sore. But yeah, I got up running yesterday, ran 10, felt good. So I'm going to do a workout today to get kind of speed back. And then I'm doing a 50K, not this Saturday, but next Saturday up in Lakewood on the west side of Denver to try to just
Bear
kind of get
Chase.
speed back. Bear Chase. Yep. So that'll be fun to get out there. I've never raced that. I'm excited to kind of check it out and check out that park. So yeah, running training is going good.
And also exciting news on the business front. What
Yeah.
happened just a couple days ago?
Yeah. So my candidate for a company that I'm working with got an offer and verbally accepted, and we're getting the written offer signed today. So there were some negotiations at the end about a variety of different little things, but I think it's all going to come together. So it'll be my first placement, which is very exciting.
Congratulations! Woo!
Yeah,
Can we input like clapping? I don't know how to do
you
that in
could.
the
Looks
pod.
like there's ways to do
Oh yeah.
reactions at the bottom, so you're more than welcome to. But yeah, I'm excited. It means I actually know what I'm doing here.
Yeah.
Party
Cool.
hat, I love it.
Wait, did it show up?
Just for a second.
Oh, party hats. Party
There
hats
it
everywhere. It's like tiny party hats. Okay.
is.
Doing a bunch of party hats if you're
You know what's
viewing this.
funny? If it doesn't stop, like it just goes on for the entire episode, that'd be
Oh, that would
hilarious.
be funny, but I clicked it like 18 times. I thought it
Oh
was
yeah,
going to be like on the phone when it like shows all of them.
right.
I don't know,
Yeah,
but it didn't do that. Well, congratulations. That's huge. And yeah, also, I'm sure a bit of a sigh of relief of just like something finally came together. And actually, this was the first job order you got too. So it's kind of interesting that that ended up being the first role or the first placement that you closed was the first job order. Sometimes they take a bit, especially if they're very niche roles. So it's a good lesson in just kind of sticking with it.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I've had a few job orders now, and they've either fizzled or they went a different direction with another candidate or something like that. But yeah, you're right. I mean, the role that I ended up filling was probably the most niche role that I had to work on. So, it's one of those where I wasn't getting a lot of competition from others, and it was going to stay open pretty much until I filled it. So, just sticking with it, being kind of relentless with the activity against it, and I was able to come through. So, it was really good. And I think, just kind of stepping back into kind of a more macro standpoint, I was at an M&A networking meeting last night, and the first 6 months of the year, M&A activity in the United States was really down. It was kind of ramping in Q1, and then with the tariffs coming out, it really kind of froze everything. But in a sign of probably things happening in the economy and the job market, M&A activity has really ramped up since July 1st. Which means that companies are starting to make moves on other companies, which also means that they're likely going to be hiring teams around the integrations of those companies. It means companies have money to spend and they are beginning to spend it, which should lend itself well to the hiring market kind of increasing. There was a 1/4 point rate cut by the Fed last week, which would be great. And then the new bill that Congress passed kind of added back in some tax cuts for specific hiring things. Some things that had cooled the hiring market were kind of eliminated. So I'm starting to feel like we're going to see kind of a bump and an increase in jobs over the next 3 to 6 months. And I think 2025 could be a pretty good year. And the amount of
26.
people
26.
2026, excuse me. The amount of people that I'm talking to right now who are open to kind of making a move job wise, I think the job market's frozen. And I think when it unfreezes, we could see another kind of 2021, 2022 scenario where a lot of people are looking to jump ship and make moves. And that could really supercharge the amount of jobs that are out there. So it'll be interesting to see if 2026, is it all like 2021 or 2022? But I'll be real with you. I'm here for it if it is.
Yeah, that'd be great timing from a business standpoint.
It would be.
And one more plug real quick on my end. If anyone's listening to this and they need a running coach, I am actively accepting new clients for my roster, spending a bit more time focused on coaching. So yeah, if you're out there and you need a running coach, check out shalvoyrunning.com as well.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, and I'm going to go to the Mammoth 200 this weekend. Yeah, so I've never been to Mammoth Lakes, California. I heard it's really beautiful. My good friend Katie Asmuth lives there. And this is the first year or inaugural year of the Mammoth 200, which is a 214-mile race that circumnavigates basically a crater. It's a giant loop around the Mammoth area and goes into some really like unique areas that people don't really run or hike in, a place called the Glass Mountains that I'm super excited to maybe even check out myself, and just looks like a really, really, really pretty course. And so I get to anchor the commentary for that with Mountain Outpost, which is going to be super fun. And, there's some really, really fun and dynamic runners racing: Tara Dower, Rachel Enchikin, Jimmy Elam, Jesse Haynes, Max Joliffe. So it's going to be cool to be part of that first year live stream that starts this weekend.
Yeah. I mean, for a race that started this year, they sure did attract a lot of like kind of big hitters within the 200 space and a lot of like more influence runners and that type of thing. So I think that race will have a lot of eyeballs on it, and hopefully it's a good experience for everybody.
Yeah, my goal is for us to outnumber the viewers of the Mammoth Trail Fest. So they're both Tim Tollefson, but Hillary Yang is the head race director for Mammoth 200, and Mammoth Trail Fest has been going on. This was the 4th year, and that happened last weekend. And it's like 3 races over the course of the weekend: VK, a 50K, and a 20-something K. So I think we can definitely outdo it, especially if all the Max Jolie fans show up in the chat. So it'll be good.
Absolutely. Well, that's awesome. I'm excited for you.
Yeah.
So jumping into the main topic, so we've put together kind of a list of kind of some of the most general interview questions that you're going to face in any given interview. And these could be from entry-level position all the way up to probably a C-level position, just based on kind of our experiences with seeing people interview. You do get some interviews that are more conversational in nature where they don't ask a lot of pointed questions. But typically at some point during any given interview process, you're probably going to run into one or probably all of these throughout. So thinking through each one, strategizing a little bit about the way, so I guess stepping back, trying to figure out what the question is really being asked for. So what it's really trying to kind of identify is important to kind of think through beforehand. And then answering it in a way that's one, authentic to you. You never want to lie about anything on here. You want to be authentic, but you also want to be thinking through what the manager is looking to hear in the answer and being able to kind of guide your authenticity towards a little bit of what they're looking for. So I think that's the way to take each question, kind of dissect it a little bit, and then decide how you would answer it in a way that the manager is going to be looking for. So I think that's the best way to kind of be thinking through.
Yeah, I would also add that even if none of these questions get asked, this is a great exercise to go through to just get your brain kind of working on talking about yourself and your past experiences. So like it's a good exercise to do regardless. But then you know and you've practiced kind of what you would say in these answers, and you can even have them written down in front of you if you need to reference back. That's, you can have notes at the test. So I think they're great things to even just think through in preparation for the interviews, regardless of whether they come up or not. And then the only other thing I would say is that we haven't talked about this topic yet, but behavioral interview questions is something that comes up oftentimes with HR or talent acquisition. And those are questions that tell me about a time when ... That is something else that it's not on our list today, but there could be a scenario where you're going to get a question. Tell me about a time when you had a conflict with a coworker and how did you resolve it? Tell me about a time when you were given a project that had a very unrealistic timeline. What was your approach to that? And so that's just something to be aware of and maybe start to think through as well. Depending on the size of company, I think usually you would see that at very large companies that have a pretty robust recruiting department. But yeah, just something else to think about. But these are the low-hanging fruit, definitely questions that we see very, very often.
And we might do, maybe next week, we'll do a round 2 on some of the behavioral-based questions. That might be another place for us to spend some time, because you're right, there's a number of times, especially in larger companies, where they're going to ask you a lot of questions like that, and they're going to have probably some definitions around how the person answers the question, whether it's kind of pass or fail. So we can kind of talk through maybe some strategies around that, because that's a good point. So the first question is, tell me about yourself. Or it could be phrased as, walk me through kind of your work history, or, tell me a little bit about kind of your overall career. And they can phrase it a bunch of different ways, but it basically is asking you to provide them with a synopsis of kind of your career so far. I think one of the things that you are looking to stay on task with here is keeping it all about kind of the professional part, and not necessarily, like, sometimes I'll have people like kind of talk through like some issues that came up career wise that they had to deal with and how it kind of set them back. It's not really what you're looking for here. So what I think strategy, so what they're looking for is you to kind of describe to them kind of your work history, one, but also how your work history applies for this particular job. So if you're interviewing for a job, think through what that job entails and what background would be required for someone to do that job. Then take your work history and kind of tailor your work history towards that job. If you're, I don't know, a marketing person and you took a product role that got very, very technical, but then you moved back into marketing and now this is a marketing job, don't spend too much time on that product role. There's no need for it, because unless this role is going to develop into more of a technical product role and you're in marketing, there's no reason to talk through more than about 10 seconds on it, because it's just not applicable to the particular role. So really taking the time to think through, all right, so this marketing job that I'm interviewing for, I'm a marketing person, so I'm going to spend a lot of time talking through any softwares that they're using that I've used in the past, or looking through the job description and seeing kind of the duties, where have I done each piece, really being able to cover that through your job history. That is a pretty succinct way to kind of make it seem as though your job history is kind of moving towards this job as a next step career wise. That makes logical sense.
Yeah, I think also if you have something that kind of shifts away from a certain path, the marketing into product management or product role and then back to marketing, you can also just mention your intent on doing the product role and how that helps make you a better marketer in the end, because now I understand the product side of things, right? And so it even though it's not directly aligned, it is beneficial because I have this overall understanding of how product departments work, and therefore I am able to help align that to marketing initiatives in this next role. So yeah, I think you're exactly right. People may also say, like, who are you? Who is so and so? Like, tell me, just tell me about yourself. And it's like, that's a very amorphous. Is that the right word?
I
It's
think
a
so.
very like subjective, broad question. But to your point, um, they don't really want to know, like, I grew up in Uray, Colorado, and I was born and raised, fourth generation native of the town, blah 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 blah. Yeah, that's not what they're going for here. Like, or like, I'm yeah, I'm an endurance athlete. Like, no, this is like, tell me about your work history and kind of how you've arrived to this point, in a succinct manner and chronologically that makes sense, so that we know that you're not gonna you're not gonna freak out and leave, and 10 days into this job, and they're kind of looking for just past behavior that's going to lead to future behavior.
Yeah, agreed. And I also think if you had a portion of your career where you were off, where you had like, a year or two where you
Mm-hmm.
were not working, this would be a good place to cover that. And I think covering that quickly and succinctly is important. But let's say you had a sick family member and had to take 2 years off to take care of them. That is a good place to kind of describe, where that gap in your resume is. Or, who knows, you had an entrepreneurial venture that, you wanted to try out and it didn't work as well as you had hoped. So you're now returning, really being able to kind of talk through kind of the reasons you were off and where the gap in the resume is. It also mitigates them asking that question at a future time. Maybe it may be something where they wanted to ask you what happened there, why you weren't working, but all of a sudden you're 3/4 of the way into the interview before they finally ask it. May as well get it out of the way early, and ask if there's any questions specifically about that, and if there's anything you did in that time off, like got a certification or you did some online learning to kind of further your career, anything you did there that kind of enhances your candidacy for the role, I would bring up there.
Yep. All right. Question 2. What interests you about this job?
Definitely. Why don't you start with that one?
I mean, I think it's your chance to, we've talked a lot about enthusiasm, but like, people want to see that you're excited about doing this work. And so think about kind of what, lights your fire about it, and gets you excited about the job itself, and then just be authentic on in portraying that, I'm super passionate about, figuring out R&D, and therefore, like, and this is a company that overall their cause is really meaningful to me, and therefore I am really really excited about kind of putting my skills to use at XYZ company. So I think that is just, they also want to know that you thoroughly understand the job, so it's your chance to show that. And I think this is a place too where, like, you can inject a bit of personality and just being kind of, just showing your true interest in, why you want to do the work.
Yeah, and I think, those are all really valid. The only thing that I would add is you can talk about kind of why you are excited about the company and the things that you've learned through your research about the company and why you feel like you'd be a good fit there and why that's exciting for you. I
Mm-hmm.
think, like you said, really expressing the enthusiasm for it. It also shows you did a lot of research on what the company stands for, company values, any of those type of things would be great to kind of talk about here, and kind of displays what you are excited about in terms of the job. And I think that's the biggest thing, is just showing enthusiasm, like you said, right off the bat.
Yep. Okay, this is the classic. Number 3.
What is your greatest strength?
I don't know, Graham. Maybe you should just answer this question. Let's do a little role play. Graham, what's your greatest strength?
So I think my greatest strength is planning. And I think that's the case because I think it allows me to make my day as efficient as possible and allows me to get the most done. And I have, starting my own company, I've got a bunch of different things from accounting to sales to recruiting to marketing to podcasting. All these things happen on any given day. So, when I sit down the week or Sunday night and really look at my week, what it looks like, I can start to kind of build a framework of what my week looks like. And then each day at the end of my day, I can put stuff on there that I didn't get to today into tomorrow and time block kind of each part of my day. So I'm making sure that I'm getting each piece done without leaving anything off. So planning would be my, my greatest strength, and it allows me to probably get more done on any given day than maybe your average person.
Nice. Okay, that was like totally impromptu. We didn't plan to do that. So you did a great job answering it. But as the interviewer, a couple things that you did in that answer, you told me that you're organized. You told me that you are efficient and you are kind of a doer and get things done. You told me that you already have a framework in place that works for you that you are going to use in whatever job you do. You told me that you are multifaceted because you mentioned doing a lot of different types of things, from sales to accounting to organization, like project management, all kinds of different things. So kind of multifaceted in your skill set. And then, you gave me a direct example. So we didn't say what job you were applying for in this role, quote unquote, but our guidance is like pick 1 or 2 relevant strengths, things that definitely do apply to the job. Yours being planning could apply to a lot of different things. I think another one you might use is just your tenacity, and like I don't know how you describe it, but like you just kind of keep going no matter what. Like there's no even if you get a lot of no's, like I guess it's tenacity. And so, that's just something else that like I feel like you would probably answer that question with. But our point here is like, it's your chance to think about what you do well and give direct examples of that to the interviewer that relate back to things you're going to use in the job.
I totally agree. I think that's right on. I think also, thinking through, think about what your greatest strength is and, really kind of think it through beforehand and kind of, back to planning, but plan out what you're going to say when they ask you this question. I think is important because the way you deliver it is important because you want to have a lot of confidence that, yes, this is my greatest strength, or you have a couple things. But I think keeping it, succinct, keep the answer under a minute. You don't need to, give them a whole diatribe on it or sell them on why it's your greatest strength. You just want to kind of tell them. And then if they have follow-up questions, you can kind of dive deeper in each piece they're curious about.
Yep.
So the flip side of that coin is question 4. What is your greatest weakness? Corinne, how would you answer that one?
Oh no, I knew you were going to do that.
I mean,
You're putting me on the spot.
Because you did it to me.
All right, sorry. So I think that one of my weaknesses is that I can overanalyze or try to kind of over perfect something to a point where I sacrifice good for the sake of great, and therefore it takes me a bit longer than maybe it should to get something done because I'm trying to do it at a level or to a degree of sophistication that might not always be necessary. So I think sometimes I have to proactively tell myself or give myself deadlines around this needs to be done by here. You're going to do your best but you're going to roll it out at that point, regardless of, whether or not it is the absolute. There could always be something you could do better. And like, let's just, for example's sake, say this is a like marketing campaign newsletter that needs to go out by X date. You know, you could sit there and work on it. I could sit there and work on it for 10 hours. Maybe I'm going to give myself 3 hours total. I'm going to do everything I can in that, you know, time frame, and then I'm going to push it out and not just over kind of, you know, focus on or complicate trying to get it super dialed, perfected, that kind of thing. So yeah, I think that's something that I've recognized in myself, that sometimes I can try to take things to a level or a degree of complexity that is not necessarily needed to just get them out the door.
Absolutely. Well, I think I liked, so you identified the exact thing that you feel like is a weakness for yourself, and then you describe it, you know, in kind of some depth, and then you also talk about the ways you mitigate it. And I think that all those steps are important. You want to make sure that you talk about that last part, how you mitigate your greatest weakness, because, you know, if you've identified a weakness but you haven't done anything to mitigate it, well, you know, what does that say about you? You know, you're just walking around with a weakness that you haven't done anything about. So I think for you specifically, I think that's right on exactly how you should answer that question. And I think, you know, to anyone listening, you know, being authentic with that, really think through what, you know, what is it that you sometimes struggle with? Because if you know yourself at all, you can really answer that question. And if it's a weakness that you've identified and you've identified it a while ago, then you've of course come up with some way to mitigate it. So really being authentic to yourself. I've had people in interviews talk about how, like, you know, they'll answer that question similarly to the way you did. Oh, you know, I'm a perfectionist. I want to have everything done exactly the right way every time. And it's like, and then they just leave it there. It's like, well, you know, what happens if you don't have time to make it perfect and you just need to get it out the door? You know, what do you do? And a lot of times I get blank stares, you know, when people answer that question, because one, I'm not sure it's fully authentic. I think they're just looking to come up with something. And two, you know, they haven't necessarily thought about the downside of being a perfectionist.
They're trying to turn their weakness into a strength in your eyes.
Exactly, which in my, you know, in my mind as a hiring manager, I wasn't looking for that. I was really looking for someone to identify truly what is a weakness of mine and how do I mitigate it. So don't be inauthentic in how you answer that question. Answer it really authentically, and I think that that's your best bet.
Yeah. Also, I think that you know, it's a opportunity to, if you're interviewing me and you ask that question, then for you to take notes that, okay, if we hire this person, they've already told me that they have trouble like with getting it out the door. I, as a manager, am therefore going to give them deadlines to help them with that. Like, this is an opportunity for you to learn how to best manage that person. And that's like going to result in the best relationship if you know like what that person needs help with and you're able to give that to them as a manager. So I think it can be beneficial for both sides.
Yeah, absolutely. Question 6 is, why should we hire?
Number 5.
Oh, sorry. Number 5. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? I'll kind of jump in with kind of what I think on this question. So I think this question, they want to see probably someone who has some initiative, who is excited about this particular role, and being careful that you don't overshoot for, you know, hey, I'm looking to be a leader within 5 years. And if you're interviewing with a small company and you're talking to the CEO, you know, if it's a 10-person company, you know, what's a leader really look like at a company like this? So making sure that you're thinking about your audience. Or another one that I've heard that I can always get a little nervous about, which is funny since I'm doing it, but I'm looking to start my own business within the next couple of years. Anytime I hear that, I'm like, well, this company's going to invest time, money, training, everything into you. So if you're planning to leave within a couple of years to start your own business, it could be something where maybe difficult for them to want to hire you based solely on that. So I think just being careful here. So I think in 5 years, you want to kind of think through what this job entails. saying, hey, I'd like to get really, really good at this role. I'm really excited to work through kind of the problems that come along. I'm excited about getting deep into it and then grow within the role, and then hopefully at some point become a leader within the organization. So something along those lines, kind of talking through how you're going to do this actual role, as well as being able to kind of articulate your excitement to kind of grow. Corinne, what do you think about that? It looks like Corinne's having some connectivity issues. We'll kind of jump into number 6, which is why we should hire you. So you're able to kind of put together a little bit of a speech around kind of your value proposition for this particular role. So kind of your 30 to 90 second around, hey, looks like, you guys are looking for this. Here's the experience that I have so far, and here's what I think I could bring to your company. This is where enthusiasm really kind of takes a front seat, really being able to talk through kind of each piece and getting an understanding of, why you're excited about the role, what you can do next, what you can do for them. And then I think coming back to what they need for this role and how you're able to really help them with that, I think is really important. So it's your opportunity to kind of give your elevator pitch, to talk through what you've done so far, what you're excited to do next, and what you think you can bring to the role in kind of an encapsulated kind of package. I think practicing this in front of a mirror beforehand, this is a great opportunity. I think if you're interviewing with a bunch of different companies, being ready to kind of talk this through, I think is a really important aspect of things. So, really being able to talk about, 1, your background and history, 2, your enthusiasm for this job, and then showing a little bit of kind of the research that you've done is kind of seems to be the best way to do this.
Can you hear me?
I can, yeah.
Okay. I think my adapter died on my microphone.
I see.
So.
All right. So we're on to question 7. What questions do you have for me? So I think one of the things question 7 does is shows the research that you've done with the company, getting an understanding of, them as a mission, where are they trying to go as an organization, and how can you help them get there? Kind of thinking through that piece, and then what questions that you have that kind of lead to a discussion here. So I think questions that are open-ended, really getting the manager to talk, asking about, things like, what's the culture on the team? What do you feel like the best person from a personality standpoint, what do you feel like the traits they would have to fit on this team well? You want to know that stuff. I mean, if the team is very, very communicative, quote unquote, maybe over communicative, you want to know that going in, because you may have a Slack channel that goes nuts every 20 minutes that you have to think through how you're going to kind of handle that. Or, if the company has, some financial information out there that's really pertinent right now. Let's say they had a really great quarter, or they had a really bad quarter, or any of those types of things. Asking those questions shows you did some homework and you're thinking through about how you can help them with that. Corinne, what do you think?
Yeah, and I think that even if this question is not asked by somebody, it is maybe you should try to interject your own questions at the end of these interviews, as it's naturally possible. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about? Yeah, I have a question about this, and this, because it's your opportunity to really understand if it's a good fit for you as well. For you to genuinely know, like, how to set yourself up for success. I always like saying, like, what would success look like in this role in, the first year of being in it? That's a great one to ask. And then you hear firsthand from the manager what they're going to be paying attention to, and you can use that as your roadmap for setting yourself up. So I think, it's just, again, genuinely a good exercise for you to think about what is important to you, and therefore what you need to know to make the right decision on if the role is a good fit. I think can you hear me still?
Yep, you're good.
Okay, something's going on weird with my volume on my computer, but if you can hear me still, that's okay. So yeah, I think it's a great question, and try to interject it even if it isn't asked of you. But again, just like you said, shows that you're doing your research, that you're thinking about actually being in the role. And yeah, it's a great way for you to just also continue to build some rapport with that interviewer.
Absolutely. I think the questions that you don't really want to, ask here are the really yes, no, like, what are your benefits? Or, this is a kind of a backfill for somebody. Why do you think the person left? Or, really kind of diving into anything like, hey, I noticed your Glassdoor reviews weren't very good. What do you think about that? I mean, really just, thinking through like how you're asking these questions. Yeah, I would keep this positive and open-ended and ready for kind of the manager to be able to kind of put a spin. One thing also that you want to be kind of careful of is making sure you're staying within your manager's kind of purview. So if you're like a marketing person and you noticed, financials were out there and I don't know, you noticed that the PE ratio of the company is really far off. Asking the marketing manager about the PE ratio of the company, they may not have that much of an opinion on it, just because that's not their area of expertise. So just being cautious on the questions that you're asking and making sure you're asking things that are very relevant and pertinent to the manager.
Yeah, know your audience. Also, I think another great one is, what are the next steps in the
Yeah,
process?
closing.
Just
Absolutely,
like a
closing is the next step.
salesperson, always asking for next steps, knowing, you probably want to know too, when should I expect to hear back about next steps? What do those look like? Kind of like driving the process yourself, is also great, way to kind of wrap things up.
Definitely. So that's kind of our take on the most common questions that you're going to get in an interview. Next week, I think we'll probably jump into some of the more behavioral based questions and more of the specifics that you might get to ask. If you're looking for kind of more information and checklists and ways to enhance your job search, check us out on Patreon, Two Talented Podcast on Patreon. You can find us out there. Give us a follow. If you like what we're doing, give a comment, let us know. Tell us what you liked, what you didn't like, and if you have any questions for the podcast that we can answer for you, we'd be happy to answer some on the podcast. Corinne,
Yeah.
anything else?
Share this with a friend that's maybe in the interview process or job seeking right now. And if there's any other super common interview questions that you're hearing, let us know what those are, and maybe we'll bring them up on the next one when we talk about behavioral based interviews. But thanks
Absolutely.
for listening.
Thank you so much.